something I learned from years and years on the path, on the healing path and the spiritual path, is that the patterns keep repeating because they're trying to get your attention. The patterns aren't just there to haunt you. The patterns are seeking resolution. If one looks from a kind of broader place and space, one starts to see that everything is seeking resolution in some sort of way. And that everything from the past wants to come to the light. This is not just a spiritual platitude, but actually a perennial truth. The patterns that are forged into us and carved into us over the years, many of them have the wound or the woundedness embedded in them. So the patterns of behavior, addiction, habit, moving away, dysfunctionality, over-attachment, aversion, desire, craving, all of these patterns built on need, mostly, have the wound and the woundedness, have the past in them. The pattern has the past in it. The pattern of your behavior, if it's behavior that is rooted in moving away from discomfort, particularly, habits, patterns, thoughts, emotions, behaviors, all have at their root the wound of the past in them. And so these patterns aren't just there, to haunt you. They're actually there knocking on the door of your beingness, knocking on the door of your presence, knocking on the door of your love, because everything wants to come home to love. And the only way they can ultimately do that is through us, is through you. But because the patterns have this, carry the past so much in them, and have been used as a strategy of avoiding the pain of the past. And so we've built a life on our avoidance. And then facing those patterns, facing what's behind those patterns, facing what's inside the patterns, the ruts, the behaviors, the addictions, feels too painful. But you can see the problem here, because they feel too painful. It feels too painful to meet them, to just be with them, to just be with yourself, instead of moving in this endless patterning. And so there's the seeing that actually the pattern is there not to harm me, but actually to heal the individual, to heal the whole organism. It's actually an intelligent behavior. It's an intelligent movement of energy. The patterns that have the wound of the past in them, that are constantly trying to get to the light or the love that we are, have a deep intelligence inside them. And I think, when that's brought to light, we know that and we see that, it becomes a truth. That's a truth. It's not the ultimate truth, but it's a relative truth that we can kind of see, well, that kind of makes sense, really, on a certain level. But the problem is the pain that's been carried from the original wounds, hurts, grievances, moving away from, hiding ourself in fear or whatever it is, have been consolidated. That hiding energy has been consolidated over so many years. We built up so many layers of protection. We built up so many walls and veils and brick upon brick upon brick upon brick in order to survive, in order to get by, in order to thrive and live in the world in the only way that we've known. Then we have this problem because all of that needs to be allowed to flow. And the fear of the organism or the ego self or the structured self or the self that we take ourselves to be says, no, that's too painful. That will result in some destruction. That is pain that it's too much for me to bear. Even though there's a truth in it, even though I know somewhere in me that this is the door to healing and to a deeper freedom, it's too painful. So we could get caught, seemingly caught, in this sort of limbo knife edge where we want the freedom from the patterns, but we don't know how to, and we don't feel that we can sit in the fire of what happens when we no longer move away or towards anything. I guess this is another way of an invitation to just sitting and just being, when the momentum of desire, when the sheer pressure of desire to move away from the discomfort is no longer heeded. You no longer go there. You just sit, stay. And it kind of, that staying at a certain point can create an opening. It can create a burning because, the self thinks it's going to die. Of course, it is on a certain level. We're not, but it is. It's the mechanism, it's the pattern that dies. See that clearly. It's not you that dies, it's the pattern that starts to die because it's no longer being fed by the repetition of our attention and our energy and our allegiance. So the pattern starts to dissolve when we no longer move towards it and no longer move away from the pain that is at the root of it. This is essential. And it's not an intellectual thing, it's a gut instinct. When you know, when you see that your life is driven by patterns, the patterns, it's always driven by certain patterns, but if those patterns have the neglected, the denied, the shadow, the pain, the wound inside them, then they have that much more, power, that much more control over our lives. In fact, we're a slave in many ways to those unconscious patterns. I mean, this conversation is to people really who've had an opening, had an inkling, had an insight, had an awareness, are on a path of transformation to whatever extent, on whatever level, whether you're the non-dual seeker who's looking to embody it, or it's the path of healing body, mind, emotion system. It's all the same, ultimately. If there's stuff neglected and being carried from the past that isn't resolved in some way, shape or form, it doesn't have to be a big drama, but it does have to release its energy and its story. By story, I'm not diminishing it. I'm just saying the what happenedness of it. And all of that has an energy. And if that energy hasn't been released in some way, then it drives unconscious patterns. Whether you're a non-dual seeker or a healing seeker, it's the same. Your aim, your intention, your search might be different, but the movement of that unresolved energy is the same. And it shows up and it shows up and it shows up. It shows up in the patterns and habits and addictions and nuances and needs of the way we are with ourselves, the way we are with others, the way we are with our food instincts, our drinking, our use of TV, our use of screens and all of this kind of stuff. It shows up. It kind of comes in like a little. We might be thinking we're autonomous, authoritative beings, doing things out of the complete clarity of free will, or just because I want to. And yet you look inside it and see there's something moving you towards and away. Fascinating. The nuances and complexities of the human being, while they're in denial or trying to keep certain things at bay, certain hurts and wounds at bay, the complexities, the tangled webs that we weave are really quite amazing. We're like, we're like Shakespearean characters, all rolled into one. And the strange thing is that once it's cleared, and once there's some sort of deeper abiding in I suppose a kind of awakened state, or at least rooted in a deeper presence, with none of that stuff, particularly from the past, that's driving the patterns of life anymore, well then life is no longer like some Shakespearean play, and everything becomes very, very simple. I mean, to the ego mind, that sounds terrible. But it's not. It's life is lived transparently, honestly, simply, clearly, directly. I mean, nothing is... Still, there are the movements of the shapes and shades, of life. Still, the vestiges of the past show up, but they're not troublesome, and they don't drive patterns of behavior, or patterns of belief, or patterns of addictions, or patterns of that. So there's much more freedom. I mean, there's so much inner freedom, because nothing is pushed away and nothing is argued with. So there we are. I wanted to talk about the patterns that we weave and how to deal with them. Bless you. Thank you. Thank you for watching.